Cave Crawler is a 2D side-scroller action platformer made in the Godot engine, a free open-source 3D and 2D game engine by Evan Youssef. It loads into a small window, but you can large screen it, and in the settings you can also use full screen. It's got a simple menu with a black background and some red block particles with options to start, exit, and for the settings. The settings menu is humble with effect and music volumes, bloom, particle, and show cursor settings. You can't actually control the menu with the cursor, so it's not really needed, it's all arrow keys. With that exhausted, I then started a new game. The menu gave me a tutorial, 5 levels, and a box for a bonus level in the bottom right, but everything bar the tutorial was blocked out in red, so the game makes sure you make some effort to learn the ropes before going in blind. Saying that, the tutorial extended as far as a diagram of your mouse and keyboard, or your gamepad, depending on your input, with keys and buttons highlighted in red. This is an improvement to the previous game I reviewed that gave you nothing at all, but I was still required to poke the relevant buttons on my keyboard to find out what they did. A and D are for left and right, W is to jump. The jump varies in height depending on how long you press the button for, from a small hop to a high jump. X is to shoot and C is also to jump. Spacebar is also to jump. The arrow keys are also for left, right and jump, and left mouse is also to shoot. So despite the number of highlighted buttons, there are actually only 4 controls to move, shoot and jump. The setup does allow you to vary your combination, I suppose, since if you were left-handed you could use the arrow keys to control and have your mouse in your left hand to shoot, or use C, whereas right-handed I had A, D and spacebar to run and jump as a more natural layout, and left mouse to shoot. Either way, I'm glad they highlighted some buttons, but in fairness you could have just written out what they do on the screen with a symbol or just listed the buttons for each bit. There's also a HUD visible with 4 red diamonds in the top left and a number counter at the top right. There are 3 red blips in the bottom right, but on moving it turns out those are collectible. They give you 10 points each, though your score doesn't actually contribute anything as there are no leaderboards, so it's not the end of the world if you miss any. The game introduces environmental hazards. If you die, you retry from the start of the level. You can also get 1 foot completely off the edge without falling, so the edges have a bit of flex to them. The next challenge introduced is roof spikes, and you can climb up levels rather than it just being side to side. The next room you get a crab enemy which you can shoot through the spiky diamonds to kill. They take 3 shots to kill and follow a set track even to their own detriment, meaning if their track takes them off an edge into lava, they will embrace the void willingly. This is true for all moving enemies. You get health diamonds that look like the one in the top left, as those are your lives. The spiky diamonds look a bit similar, but there is a shine to them to distinguish them a bit more. The end of the level is denoted by a red lever-looking thing in the ground. Basics covered, I got an achievement for my learning and went into the first level. The tutorial prepared me well as I saw everything I'd already seen really, as I ran and jumped and shot my way through. In the levels there are actually checkpoints, not really marked specifically, but if you die after you've reached a certain point, you'll restart from that point rather than all the way back at the beginning. On respawn midway, I also found out that you can go back in the levels to previous areas, although there's not much point in doing this. One thing noticeable at this point was the jump arc with the collectible positions. There are some jumps you do where there are collectibles along the jump, so ideally you want to jump to the next platform and intercept them. But the position of the blip means if you intercept it you don't fully make the jump, and if you want to make the jump you won't collect it. In some cases landing on the next platform and then jumping back allows you to get it, but in some cases this doesn't work, and you just have to accept that it's out of reach, or that you'll have to take damage. I will say there are only a couple of spots where this seems to be the case. For the rest of the game you can reach the collectibles in the right position. And as said before, the points don't actually amount to anything, so they make little impact if missed. You do drop like a rock when you jump if you let go of space. This can take a little time to get control over, but doesn't impact the control too much. I cleared the first level and took on level 2, this time getting a new hazard of falling spikes. They puff out some red mist as they loosen, but they don't actually fall unless you get close enough to them, so they act more as a thing to spot, since if you see them you can usually edge closer and goad them until they fall, but if you get distracted they can deal you some damage. Level 3 introduces the skeleton hands. They look a bit like leaves, but if you get near them they pop up and grab you. You can shoot these once they're out of the ground to get them out the way, so again, like the stalactites, your best bet is to get close enough that they come out and stay there, and then blast them until they vanish. But if you don't spot them, you get to feel the tender caress of a bony hand on your health points. They also introduce bats to the end of the level as well, another enemy that bounces around the room like a DVD screensaver and can be shot with 2 hits. If their angle takes them into lava, they will kamikaze into it just like the crabs. In level 4 they introduce cave cannons, which sit on walls and fire rapid shots at you. These are also destroyable with about 4 shots, but mostly they spawn on roofs where you can't reach them, so their purpose is to make you sprint across the map with bullets churning up the ground behind you to avoid taking damage. Level 5 is not a platformer level. You jump a couple of times and then fall down a hole and enter a boss fight with the cave spaceman. He has a shoulder-mounted cannon that rapid fires at you, and also leaps across the map. This is a pretty difficult boss in principle because he's hard to dodge. The space is small, and obviously with him jumping at you, the window between each laser shot to dodge is decreased. But even if you run underneath him when he jumps at you, the laser has 360 angle, so it can still shoot you underneath him. And with the other cannons, when you want to sprint under the bullets, you have to time it. You don't really have time to time it here, because if he's jumping at you, that's too bad, you better move. You ideally want to hop up for the laser shot to fire in the air where you were, but again it takes timing and the fight feels very much like Overwhelm. It took me 3 attempts, so actually not too many, but that was just Hail Mary firing to try and chip him down as much as I could. It is doable though. On finishing the boss fight, you escape the caves and end up on a nice beach, where you get a congrats and an offer for the main menu or to restart the level. Going back to the menu shows you the bonus level is now unlocked. This level is really just an amalgamation of all the previous hazards and skills. Not longer than the normal levels, I would say, but it's got all of the best of the challenges in it as a nice finisher. I've kind of whizzed through the game there, but the overview gives a good perspective of the way the game is formatted. It gives you basics in the tutorial and seats them in the first level, then builds from there to keep the challenge on an increase through each level. It's well proportioned, nothing is impossible to do, and the challenges are focused on a few specific areas. Reaction to enemies, with some short-range conflicts having to dodge or backpedal so you have time to fire. Jump precision with thin platforms, sometimes navigated under pressure, or specific areas to land on to make the next jump good. And jump height control, with giving you ceilings to limit how high you can jump, or spreading platforms wide. Each of these elements are used nicely to vary the levels. Some challenging areas may require another attempt, but everything is possible and there's enough challenge to make you slow down and think or focus on your control. And of course, your environmental hazards make sure that your attention isn't too drawn in and you're looking ahead to see what lies in wait. The boss fight is a nice touch to finish the last official level, but it would have been nicer I think if it required a bit more strategy or precision. If you made it more manoeuvrable but decreased the rate of laser fire, I think it would work much better. Because with your shots being linear at the level that you're at, the focus would be more on correct positioning and timing of your shots. The speed of the boss shots at the moment isn't really dodgeable, so it becomes more desperation than skill. But if the boss was more active hopping around or hopping higher, the slower shots would still mean you have to dodge and maybe sabotage your good position for a shot every now and again, but the onus would mainly be on you to control your game right. The bonus level I like as well as a melting pot of the game's controls and a good final challenge. Again, not out of proportion, but another little step up. Essentially, it feels like what level 5 would have been if it wasn't a boss fight. One thing I did think of whilst playing is that it would have been nice for there to be some link between the main levels and unlocking the bonus level. For example, since there are no leaderboards, you could attach a point counter to each of the levels and say you have to reach this amount of points in each level to be able to unlock the bonus level. That way you would have some in-game purpose to your collectibles, and potentially extend the playtime with players having to repeat levels to finish them without losing too many points. Because dying resets your score counter, it would encourage players to get good enough to avoid death, or it would give some use to your ability to go backward in levels, because if they reset at the checkpoint with no points, they could turn around and gather some points from enemies and collectibles further back in the level before carrying on to make it to the end. Finishing the 5 levels to unlock it works well enough, just a brainstorm for an advancement that would have given more purpose to your point counter than just the personal gratification of getting the dots. The level design for the game is good. It's a side-scroller, but as said, there are plenty of ups and downs needing you to climb and drop. The platform sizes and positions are used well in combination with hazards to give the challenge, and the features like tufts of grass are differentiated enough to not be mistaken for the skeleton hands. The environment itself is similar all the way through, but there's some use of lava and some not to mix it up, some jagged walls to add feature. It's black, white and red in design, but the environment fits a retro platformer style, and every feature is distinguishable. The use of red for particle animations, collectibles, health and some environmental dangers draws your attention and makes them stand out. The animations for the enemies are Space Invaders-like, which fits into the theme, but your own character has quite a fluid run that's comfortable on the eyes. The sound effects are good to give emphasis to the shots, when damage is taken, and when things are collected with 8-bit boops and such. Though the music is the same all the way through the game, it fits the tone with its also 8-bit style, but it would have been nice to have a bit of variety even for the boss fight. It wasn't bad, but it could be a little samey. Overall, I think this is a very nice effort for a one-man show. It's a short game at about 20 minutes or so, but it paces itself nicely. It's nostalgic in design, though still fluid enough to not feel janky, and it uses what it has well to make for a possible but testing challenge. It's rounded to a close in its format despite being humble in size, but it achieves what it sets out to do, gives you a decent slice of content to show its capability, and then signs off. The controls are simple, the jump can take a little adjusting to, but it's definitely nowhere near as impactful as controls have been in other platformers I've played, and this one is controllable to achieve the aim without frustration. If you fancy a quick little challenge, this would be a nice game to try, so I'll give Cave Crawler an 8.5 out of 10.